The first time I heard the dog barking, it barely registered as anything more than an annoyance. I woke up because the sound was so close it felt like it was coming from inside my bedroom, rather than through the wall beside it. Deep, violent barks. The kind of barking dogs make when they see something they don't understand and already hate. I remember opening my eyes into the dark and feeling that immediate disorientation that comes from being dragged out of sleep too fast. For a few seconds, I just lay there, listening. Bark, bark, bark. Then a low growl, claws scratching frantically against something hard, and another burst of barking that made the cheap frame around a print on my wall buzz slightly. I checked the time on my phone. 2:18 a.m. I had only lived in the building for 4 months, but I knew the apartment next to mine had been empty the entire time. At least, that was what I thought. Maybe someone had moved in? Maybe they had a dog that hated the adjustment? Maybe the walls were thinner than I realized? It was irritating, but it was also normal enough that I put a pillow over my head and tried to go back to sleep. The barking continued for maybe 8 or 9 minutes, then it stopped all at once. No fading, no final growl. Just complete silence. That should have been the end of it. A bad night, a noisy neighbor, something ordinary. But the next night it happened again. And that's when I noticed the first detail that made it feel wrong. It started at exactly 2:18 a.m. Not around 2:18. Not close. Exactly. That second night I was already half awake before it started. I don't know why. Maybe my body remembered the hour before my mind did. Maybe some quieter version of me had been waiting for it. But I remember looking at the dark outline of my curtains, then glancing at my phone and seeing 2:17. Then the first bark hit the wall so hard I felt it in the mattress. This time it sounded angrier, closer, more focused. I sat up and listened carefully. The dog wasn't moving around. It wasn't barking in bursts from different parts of the neighboring apartment. It was in one spot. One exact spot. The wall beside my bed. More specifically, the stretch of wall directly behind the headboard. Every bark came from there. Every snarl, every scratch. As if the dog was standing on the other side of that wall, staring at the exact place where my head rested while I slept. The next morning I knocked on the neighboring door before leaving for work. No answer. I knocked harder. Still nothing. The hallway smelled faintly like bleach and old carpet. Nothing about it suggested a dog had recently been living there. No food bowls outside the door. No leash hanging from the knob. No scratch marks. I checked the mailboxes in the lobby on my way out. Apartment 5B was still labeled vacant in the building manager's neat block letters. I stood there for a moment, staring at the word like it was trying to insult me. That evening, I asked the building manager. He was in the basement laundry room, pretending to fix one of the coin slots while actually just staring at it with folded arms. When I mentioned the barking, he gave me a look that was half confusion and half the beginning of irritation. "There's no dog in 5B, he said. "Then it's coming from somewhere close," I replied, "because it sounds like it's right behind my wall." He shrugged. "Sound travels weird in old buildings. Every night? At the exact same time?" That made him pause for a second. Not long, but long enough for me to notice. Then he said, "Maybe the people upstairs let their dog roam." There were no dogs upstairs. I knew that because I'd met the woman in 6B twice in the hallway, and she always complained loudly about animals in apartment buildings. Still, I didn't argue. I went back upstairs with this ugly feeling in my stomach that wasn't fear yet, just the sense that I'd asked the wrong question and gotten a rehearsed answer. The third night, I stayed awake. At 2:15 a.m., I turned off the lamp, sat against the wall opposite my bed, and watched the darkness gather in the corners of the room. The apartment was silent, except for the soft hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen and the occasional plumbing noise from somewhere below. My bedroom looked ordinary enough. Desk, closet, bed shifted a little too close to the wall because the room was small. Nothing ominous, nothing strange. At 2:18, the barking started. This time I got up immediately and walked toward the wall. The dog lost its mind. The growling became frantic, throat deep and ugly. Something hit the other side of the wall hard enough that the drywall trembled under my fingertips. Then came frantic scratching, like claws scraping at plaster, trying to dig through. I stood there with my hand flat against the wall and realized something that made my mouth go dry. The dog wasn't barking through the wall. It was barking into it. The direction was wrong. The sound wasn't spreading from the neighboring apartment toward mine. It was concentrated, funneling toward a point inside the wall itself, like the animal believed something in there was alive. Without thinking, I knocked 3 times. Quick, hard. The barking stopped immediately. Not slowed, not faded, stopped. For a moment, there was nothing. Then, on the other side, the dog let out a soft whine. Another, a frightened sound. Not aggressive anymore, afraid. It backed away. I could hear the movement now, nails skidding, weight shifting farther from the wall. And then, after maybe 5 seconds of complete silence, I heard something else. A slow, deliberate tapping. From inside the wall. 3 taps. Not from the neighboring apartment. Not from somewhere beyond the drywall. From inside it. As if something hollow was hidden there. Something with just enough space to move. I backed away so fast I hit the edge of my desk. The tapping stopped. The room went quiet again. I didn't sleep at all after that. The next morning, I bought a cheap voice recorder app upgrade and a second charging cable so I could leave my phone recording by the wall without worrying about battery. If the sound was real, I wanted proof. Not because I thought proof would make it less frightening, but because I was already starting to understand how easy it would be to doubt myself by daylight. That night, I set my phone on the floor beside the wall at 2:10 a.m. and started recording. At 2:18, the barking started, right on time. Listening to it while fully awake was somehow worse than being dragged out of sleep by it. The sound had shape now. It had intention. The dog barked in short bursts, then snarled low, then scratched. Every few seconds it paused, as if listening, and in those brief silent gaps I heard the tapping again. Tap, a bark, tap, a growl, tap. I stared at the wall with my whole body tense, every hair on my arms up. After 8 minutes, the barking stopped. The tapping continued 3 more times. Then silence. The next morning I played the recording back. The barking was there, clear as anything. So clear it made my stomach turn because now it existed outside me. But the tapping was gone. Between the barks there was nothing but room tone, a faint electrical hum. My own breathing from across the room, no taps, no answer from the wall. That was the first moment I seriously considered the possibility that something was wrong with me and not the building. I worked remotely, so I spent the day in the apartment trying not to think about that. Every small sound, started to feel loaded. Pipes ticking in the wall sounded deliberate. The old radiator in the living room made tiny metallic pings that made me glance up every time. Around noon, I went into the empty apartment next door. At least I tried to. I asked the manager for access under the excuse that I thought maybe there was a leak or trapped animal, and he reluctantly unlocked it for me. 5B was empty. Completely. No furniture, no bowls, no dog smell, no evidence that anyone had been there for months. Dust had gathered in the corners. The windows were locked. The place had that stale, untouched smell of sealed rooms and old paint. The wall on the far side of the bedroom should have lined up exactly with the wall behind my bed. I stood there staring at the blank wall, trying to imagine a large dog on the other side of it. There was no place for one. Then I noticed scratches near the baseboard. Faint. Easy to miss. Not fresh enough to be dramatic. But there. 3 thin grooves in the paint, then another set a little farther down, all clustered around the midpoint of the wall. I crouched and touched them. The manager asked what I was doing. "Nothing," I said too quickly. He looked annoyed. "There's no dog," he repeated. "I know," I said, but by then I wasn't answering him anymore. That night I moved my bed. I dragged it to the opposite side of the room, far from the wall, and slept with the lamp on. I told myself this was temporary, just until I figured out what I was hearing. A practical solution. Distance from the source. At 2:18, the barking started again. And this time it was worse. Because it didn't sound farther away, it sounded closer. As if moving the bed hadn't changed the sound at all. As if the barking wasn't oriented around the room itself, but around me. I got out of bed slowly and stepped toward the center of the room. The barking intensified. I stepped back. It eased slightly. I stepped closer to the wall again. Immediate frenzy. Barking, clawing. A horrible wet snarl that made my chest tighten. Then there was a loud thump from inside the wall, hard enough to shake a framed picture off its hook. The frame crashed to the floor. I jumped, swore, and for one stupid second turned my back to the wall. That was when I heard breathing behind me, not from the wall, from inside the room. I spun around. Nothing was there. But the barking had stopped. The room was silent, except for one thing. Slow, heavy breathing from the other side of the newly repaired patch of wall where the picture had fallen. I stood completely still. Then a voice whispered softly through the drywall. "Tell it to stop." The words were quiet, dry, almost conversational. I ran. I didn't pack. I didn't think. I grabbed my keys and left the apartment in socks, went down 5 flights of stairs too fast, and stood on the sidewalk at 2:27 a.m., shaking under the streetlights until the cold finally forced me to move. I slept in my car in a grocery store parking lot across town. In the morning, everything felt unreal enough that I almost didn't go back. But I needed clothes. My laptop. Proof that I still had a normal life to return to. So I went back around 9 o'clock, broad daylight, neighbors awake, delivery truck outside. Safe conditions. Human conditions. My apartment looked normal. No overturned furniture, no broken wall. The picture frame lay where it had fallen, glass cracked, but otherwise everything was untouched. I called the building manager and insisted he come up with maintenance. I told him there was something inside the wall. He brought 2 workers and a look that said he'd already decided I was wasting his time. They cut a large square into the drywall beside my bed. Nothing. Insulation. Studs. Wiring. A narrow dead space between units. No nest, no animal remains, no mold, no secret cavity. One of the maintenance guys laughed under his breath and asked if maybe I'd been hearing the TV from another unit. I didn't answer because I'd noticed something on the inside face of the stud nearest the floor. Scratches. Hundreds of them, tallies, grouped in fives, carved deep into the wood with something sharp and patient, more than I could count at a glance. And beneath the marks, carved in uneven letters that looked almost frantic, were words. The dog can see it. I stared at the sentence until the manager asked what I was looking at. I stepped aside. By the time he bent down to see, one of the workers had moved in front of the beam with the drywall piece, blocking it. Nothing, I said. I don't know why I lied. Maybe because I could already tell from his face that he wanted this to be over, more than he wanted it explained. Maybe because saying the words out loud would have made them mine. They patched the wall, sanded, promised to repaint tomorrow. That night I stayed in the apartment because part of me wanted to see whether opening the wall had changed anything. At 2:18, the barking started again, but not from the neighboring apartment, not even from the wall. It came from the corner of my bedroom, inside my room, low at first, like a dog barking through a throat full of water, then louder, sharper, until it sounded like the animal was standing in the darkness just beyond where the lamplight fell. I didn't turn my head. I just sat on the bed gripping the blanket with both hands and listening. The barking stopped. 3 taps came from the patched wall. Then from behind me in the dark corner, 3 matching taps answered. I turned then. Nothing. Just the room. My desk. The closet door closed. The new patch of wall slightly lighter than the rest because the paint didn't match yet. Then something pressed outward from the wall. Not enough to break through. Just a slow bulge in the plaster, as if a hand had leaned into it from inside. Then another bulge a foot lower, moving, tracking, across the wall toward where my bed had originally been. I stood up so fast my chair went over. The dog barked again, from inside the room this time, behind me, furious and terrified all at once. I turned toward the sound and saw nothing but darkness in the corner. Then the whisper came again. Closer. You moved. I left the lights on all night and sat in the kitchen until sunrise. The next day I did what I should have done earlier. I started asking neighbors questions. Most of them brushed me off or pretended they'd never heard anything strange in the building. But on the 3rd floor, an older woman named Mrs. Koenig opened her door only a crack and listened without interrupting while I stumbled through the story. When I mentioned the dog, something in her face changed. Not surprise. Recognition. She asked, "You hear it at 2:18? I nodded. She looked down the hallway before opening the door a little wider. "That unit wasn't always empty," she said. "5B? She nodded. "Couple lived there years ago. Man-woman big shepherd mix. Dog barked at the walls all the time, according to everyone near them. Then one day the woman was gone. Gone how? Nobody knew. Husband said she left him. Police came around because of the dog. Neighbors complained, said it wouldn't stop barking. After a while, the man moved out too. They renovated. New tenants came and went. But no one stayed long." My throat tightened. "Why?" Mrs. Koenig held my gaze for a second too long. "Because sometimes they started hearing the dog." I asked if she'd heard it. She shook her head. "Not from my floor." But I heard scratching once, through the radiator line. And one tenant in your apartment, years ago, started asking strange questions. About sounds in the wall, about breathing. Who? I don't remember his name, she said, but he had a dog. That detail stayed with me longer than anything else. I went back upstairs and searched public records like a man trying to prove to himself that obsession is the same thing as investigation. Property records, tenant reviews, neighborhood forums, local arrest logs. Most of it turned up nothing useful. Then, buried in a thread about unsafe landlords from almost 6 years earlier, I found a comment from someone claiming a tenant in 5B had gone missing after weeks of complaining about noises in the walls and that the dog was the only thing that knew where she was. No names, no proof. Just one comment under a username that hadn't posted since. That night, I didn't wait in the bedroom. I set a chair in the hallway outside the room, left the bedroom door open, and watched from there with every light on. At 2:18, the dog barked. The sound came from inside the bedroom. Not the wall, the room. It was standing somewhere I couldn't see, just outside the angle of the doorway. The barking was deafening, focused on the repaired wall. I could hear nails scraping floorboards now, circling, charging, retreating. But when I leaned slightly to see better, there was nothing there. Just the bed, the patch, the lamp glow. Then the bed frame moved. Not much. Just a small scrape against the floor, like something beneath it had shifted and pushed upward. The dog barked harder. I stood. The scrape came again. Then a tapping, this time from under the bed. Tap, tap, tap. I took one step backward. The dog let out a shrill, panicked yelp, and something underneath the bed whispered, "Don't leave me with it." I shut the bedroom door and jammed a chair under the handle, even though I knew, rationally, that a chair would not stop whatever was able to answer knocks from inside drywall. The dog barked for another 6 minutes, then silence. In the morning, the chair was still under the handle. The door was still shut. Nothing in the room looked disturbed. Except for one thing. There were muddy paw prints on the floor beside my bed. Large prints. Dog prints. 4 of them, as if an animal had stood there facing the wall for several seconds, and then vanished. I took pictures immediately. By noon, the prints had dried and faded so completely they were invisible. The pictures remained. That was the first actual evidence I had that wasn't just sound. I almost sent the photos to the building manager. I almost sent them to the police. Instead, I stared at them alone until my phone battery died. Because I knew what the next question would be. Where did the dog go? And I had no answer. I stopped sleeping in the apartment after that. I'd stay out as late as possible, then come back after 3 o'clock and sleep on the couch with the TV on until dawn. For 3 nights, nothing happened. Then, on the 4th night, I came home at 3:25 a.m. and found my bedroom door open. I knew I had shut it. The apartment was silent, TV off, kitchen dark. I stood in the living room, listening, and heard a soft sound from inside the bedroom. A dog breathing, slow, heavy, close to the floor. I didn't go in. I stood there frozen for a full minute until the breathing stopped. Then I heard something shift across the room. Not pause, bare feet. 1 step, then another. Very slow. The footsteps approached the doorway from inside the dark room and stopped just short of where light from the hallway would have reached them. I backed all the way to the front door without taking my eyes off the opening. And then, from the dark inside my bedroom, the same dry whisper said, "It doesn't like when you make me sleep alone." I left again. This time I went to the police station. I knew how it would sound. I knew. But exhaustion and fear had eroded the part of me that cared about sounding rational. I told the desk officer that I thought someone had been entering my apartment and hiding, that I was hearing voices, that the wall had strange carvings, and there were animal prints inside a locked room. 2 officers came with me the next afternoon. By daylight, with uniforms in my kitchen and the normal sounds of the building around us, I almost felt stupid. They searched the apartment, opened the closet, looked under the bed, checked the windows, checked the patched wall. Nothing. One of them was polite enough not to look openly skeptical. The other asked if I'd been sleeping. "Not much," I said. He nodded like that explained everything. Then one of them crouched beside the wall patch and frowned. "What's that?" he asked. He pointed to the lower corner near the baseboard. There, half hidden by fresh paint, was a line scratched into the plaster. Not there the day before. I knelt down to read it. "It moves when you move the bed." The younger officer exhaled slowly through his nose. "Did you write that?" "No." "Anyone else have access?" "No." He looked at me for a second. Then he stood up and said they'd file a report. When they left, they took the edge of my certainty with them. Not because they helped, but because they had seen it. They had seen at least one part of it and not laughed. That night, 218 came and went in silence. No barking, no tapping, no whispering. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt something worse. Waiting. The apartment was too quiet. Like whatever had been announcing itself had decided it no longer needed sound. At 2:27, I heard the bedroom closet door click open by itself. At 2:31, something padded softly from the bedroom into the hall. At 2:34, a handprint appeared on the outside of my bedroom wall, pressing outward from beneath the paint. Fingers splayed as though someone inside the wall had leaned hard against it. At 2:36, the dog barked once from the living room. Just once, right behind me. I turned so fast I nearly fell. Nothing there, but the couch cushion behind me was indented. The indentation remained for maybe 3 seconds, then slowly rose. After that, I understood that the dog was not the thing haunting the apartment. The dog was the warning, the only thing that recognized it as soon as it began moving, the only thing left that still reacted honestly. I don't know why that thought made me finally go back to 5B, but it did. Maybe because I needed the empty apartment to be empty one more time. Maybe because I needed to know whether the wall lined up the same way from that side now that I'd heard the breathing from under my own bed. The manager was gone for the evening, but the maintenance lockbox still hung in the basement office. I took the spare key. 5B opened with a reluctant scrape. The apartment smelled wrong now. Not stale, damp, animal. There was a sour note in the air like old fur and wet plaster. I walked slowly through the living room and into the bedroom, stopping at the shared wall. On that side, the paint had bubbled in a long vertical line from waist height to the floor. And beside the baseboard, scratched directly into the wall, was another sentence. It asked her to move the bed, too. I stood there staring at the words until I heard a sound behind me. A dog's low growl. I turned slowly. A shape stood in the doorway of the empty bedroom. Large, black-coated, shepherd-like, real enough to cast a shadow on the hall carpet. It didn't bark. It just stared at me with its ears pinned back and lips peeled slightly from its teeth. Then it looked, not at me but past me, toward the shared wall. A deep growl rolled out of it. And from inside the wall, immediately answering, something knocked 3 times. The dog lunged. Not at me, at the wall. It hit the drywall so hard, dust shook loose from the ceiling. Then it barked once, explosively, and the whole apartment went cold. I ran. I dropped the spare key in the hall and didn't go back for it. That night I packed everything I could fit into my car. I didn't care about the deposit. I didn't care about rent. I wanted distance. Walls I hadn't slept beside. A room where 2:18 didn't matter. As I loaded the last bag, I saw Mrs. Koenig standing at the far end of the hallway watching me. She didn't wave. She just said, "Don't take the bed." I froze. I wasn't going to. She nodded once. "Good." Then she looked toward my apartment and added, "It follows room, not person, until it doesn't." I didn't ask what that meant. I didn't want the answer. I left before sunset and stayed in a motel near the highway. Cheap place, thin towels, ice machine outside. I slept badly, but I slept. No barking, no whispers, no tapping, just the constant hum of the air conditioner and traffic on the road. On the second night, I woke at 2:18 a.m. to complete silence and felt relief so strong I almost cried. Then I heard a dog bark. Not in the motel. In my dream. No, that wasn't right. Not a dream. A memory of sound arriving before the sound itself, like thunder before lightning. Then, from the wall beside the motel bed, 3 slow taps. I got up and turned on every light in the room. Nothing happened after that. At dawn, I checked out. I drove for almost an hour before admitting to myself what I already knew. Mrs. Koenig had been right. Maybe it followed the room first. But at some point, if you stayed long enough, it learned you too. I never went back for the rest of my things. The landlord called twice, then stopped. I found another apartment in a different part of the city. Top floor, different building, different block. No shared wall behind the bed. I made sure of that. For a few weeks, nothing happened. Then one night, just after 2:18 a.m., I woke because I heard a dog barking somewhere far away outside. A normal sound. Street sound. I lay there listening to it fade. Silence returned, and then from the wall behind my new bed something tapped 3 times. I moved out again before morning. I've lived in 3 places since then. Short-term sublets, cheap month-to-month rooms, 1 furnished studio where I slept on the couch because the bed touched a wall. I never stay anywhere long now. I keep my things in boxes. I don't unpack more than I have to. I tell people I like minimalism, mobility, freedom. That's easier than explaining I'm trying not to let any room learn my shape, but the pattern keeps finding me. Not every night, not even every month, just enough. A bark outside at 2:18 a.m., 3 taps from the nearest wall, a soft dog whine from an empty room, a sentence scratched somewhere new in a place I know I checked before. The last one appeared inside a closet door in a rental on the north side. It knows when you sleep facing the wall. I don't sleep facing walls anymore. I don't own a bed frame. I keep a lamp on all night. And sometimes, in those thin hours before morning, I think about the dog in 5B. If there ever really was only one dog, If it belonged to a woman who heard breathing in her wall before anyone believed her. If it spent night after night barking at something no human could see clearly enough to name, I think about how the tallies in the wall were probably hers, or his, or maybe neither, just someone counting nights, because counting is what people do when they're trying to survive something that only comes at 1 hour. I've started counting too. Not tallies carved in wood, just marks in a notebook I carry from place to place. Nights I hear the bark. Nights I hear the taps. Nights the whisper comes. There haven't been many whispers since I left the first apartment. Just 2. The first was in a furnished room over a pharmacy. I woke at 2:18 to a dog barking somewhere outside and heard the whisper from inside the wardrobe. You keep moving. The second was last week in a motel off the interstate, from the bathroom wall while I was brushing my teeth before bed. It likes when you run. I haven't heard it tonight. Not yet. It's 2:16 a.m. now. I'm in another rental. Another room. Another bed I haven't let myself get used to. I'm writing this with the lamp on and the chair pushed against the wall because I still haven't decided whether that matters. 2 minutes from now, maybe nothing will happen. Maybe this will be one of the quiet nights. Maybe the dog won't bark. Maybe the wall won't answer. But I know something now that I didn't know the first night in 5C. If I hear the dog again, I won't be angry. I'll be grateful. Because if the dog is still barking, it means it can still see it. And if it can still see it, then maybe I haven't let it get close enough to stand quietly in the room with me. Maybe I still have one more warning left. It's 2:17 now. The room is silent. I can hear the refrigerator in the other room. A car passing outside, my own breathing. And there, just barely, something shifting inside the wall behind the bed. No barking yet. No taps. Just the sound of weight settling into a hollow place, as if something thin and patient has finally found the room again, and is getting comfortable enough to wait for the exact right minute. If the dog starts barking in the next 60 seconds, I'm leaving everything behind. If it doesn't, then I think that means it's already too late.